Well, today I looked at Ireland's recent relationship with the European Union in the context of Brexit, and I reflected a little bit on what Ireland's approach to Brexit tells us about its future relationship with the EU. So in particular, I spent a little bit of time looking at the way in which Ireland has navigated the period since about 2015, 2016, the EU referendum, and looked at how Ireland was successful in terms of uploading its particular interpretation of how Northern Ireland should be dealt with during the Brexit process. I looked also at the various different priorities that Ireland outlined during the Brexit negotiation period, and spent a little bit of time in particular focused on one particular strategy, which is about how Ireland will be a member of the EU in the absence of having its strategic partner, the UK, as an ally in the EU forum. So in doing all of that, I was able to suggest that Ireland has been quite successful in terms of uploading its preferences in relation to Brexit since 2016, and that it did so by seeking shelter within the EU, by building alliances with EU institutions, and by positioning itself with the European Union on the Brexit issue. And this involved uploading Ireland's particular preferences in relation to Brexit in such a way that they dovetailed with the with the EU's support for maintaining the integrity of the single market. And I also talked a little bit about a more muscular strategy which the Irish state embarked on in terms of hedging Irish interests and being much more proactive and sophisticated in terms of rolling out a strategy which involved building new relationships and new alliances with other member states where Ireland hadn't traditionally had deep relations, and how this has been successful again in terms of helping Ireland to navigate the Brexit period. And I suppose from all of that, we're able to make some suggestions about how this bodes for Ireland's future relationship within the EU and its capacity as a small state to have an impact at the EU level. This is juxtaposed then against the relationship between Ireland and the UK, which has deteriorated in the period since 2016. So in that context, the talk looked at the way in which that particular relationship has suffered from a lack of trust, has been upset by various different disputes and disagreements, but ultimately can be resurrected and can be revisited in the context of reciprocity between Ireland and Britain in relation to actually resurrecting that relationship. And I suppose I finished by suggesting how important it is that that relationship is addressed and is fixed in the context not just of Ireland's future, but the UK's future, and more particularly Northern Ireland's future stability. I think there's three ways in which this particular presentation speaks to the wider literature around EU politics and EU integration. In particular, it tells us something about small states and the way in which they can leverage influence, particularly during certain periods of crisis and in relation to certain issues and policies. So this particular case study of Ireland and Brexit tells us something about how a small state can be successful under given circumstances. It also tells us something about Europeanization, because what we've seen in all of this is that Ireland has been successful in terms of uploading its preferences to the EU on a range of different Brexit issues, whereas previously Ireland would have been much more focused on downloading from Brussels. So Brexit marks a shift in the way in which Ireland as a small state has experienced the Europeanization process. So that's another important way, I think, in which this presentation speaks to the literature. And then finally, the presentation relies on work by Wivel and Thoralson from 2018, which talks about the way in which particular small states can actually engage with the EU and with multilateral organizations. And they can do this through a process of hiding, seeking shelter, or hedging. And this particular presentation is focused specifically on how Ireland has leveraged its influence through hedging and through seeking shelter, and how that has paid dividends, at least in the short to medium term, in terms of protecting Ireland's interests and advancing its particular preferences. Well, the next piece of work that I'm hoping to do concerns the United States. So I'd like to look at Brexit through an American lens, and in particular to try and document the influence the United States has had on the Brexit process, particularly insofar as that relates to Northern Ireland. Because as we know, the United States, specifically under the presidency of President Joe Biden, has been vociferous in its support for the Good Friday Agreement, in its support for the implementation of the protocol. And I want to look at that and determine how that level of support and influence transpired, and make some judgments about the extent to which it is impacted on the Brexit process and on Northern Ireland's situation, and how it will transpire in the future in terms of the US-UK relationship and the Irish-US relationship as well.